What's up, Covalence friends? Welcome back to part 3 of our little Stripe mini-series. Today we're going to be focusing on styling that payment element to look like the rest of your application. So let's get it going. Alright, so we are starting off where we left off in part 2. We have already converted the payment intent to be a setup intent, and we've added a little bit of UI to collect some user data. And now we want to kind of make things a little bit more stylish. We're going to add some styling to our own inputs as well as make the payment intent consistent with our own styling. So let's go ahead and we're going to open up a new terminal first. If you haven't watched parts 1 and parts 2, the descriptions are in the link below, or the links are in the link or in the description below. Said that backwards. But let's go ahead and run this real quick. So yeah, go ahead and check out parts 1 and part 2. They will get you to this point, or you can just use the repo for part 2 and you'll have the repository for this starting point. So let's go ahead and we're going to run this real quick and just see where we're at. So we have our hello world, we have our first name, last name, and email. And I believe actually I don't even put any validation on this, so I think you can just go ahead and submit it and it creates the payment element, which is nice for demo purposes. But I'll go ahead and add in like an email required kind of deal there just to make it a little bit more consistent or a little bit better. But let's go ahead. We're going to keep our dev tools open just so you can kind of see any of the warnings that Stripe kind of throws out here. So it's just warning about Apple Pay right now. But you can see right now that we have our card number expiration, and by default it's only doing card number, right? Because right now we have it set at automatic payments, meaning that whatever payments we make active in Stripe, it's going to allow, and we don't have anything activated because we haven't actually set up the account fully. It's just a demo account. Once you set up your account, it will allow you to essentially have bank accounts as an option, Cash App as an option, Link, different foreign payment options as well, like I believe Klarna or Blimp or Blink. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of ones that I don't even know about, to be honest. But they will all be options for you, and you can obviously turn those on. And then with automatic payment options, it will automatically update your payment element, which is super cool. But for now, let's go ahead and we are going to manually change the setup intent, which is one nice thing about setup intents is that you can actually put whatever payment methods you want in here as long as they're activated in your Stripe account. But in test mode, it doesn't matter if they're activated or not, which is a double whammy. So it'll actually allow us to kind of see what it would be like if we manually input these payment methods. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our server and we're actually going to routers and then user. And this is where we're actually doing our call to Stripe to actually grab the setup intent or to create the setup intent. And so you see right here we have this automatic payment methods right now. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to change this. We're going to comment out the automatic payment methods and we're going to put payment method types. And that's going to be an array. And this array is where we're going to actually add the payment method types that we want to allow. So let's add card, US bank account, Cash App is another interesting one. And Link. Link is Stripe's actual payment service that they allow, so it's pretty cool. It'll actually take in your credit card details and it'll attach to your email address, and then it'll essentially be one-click checkouts or input your email address type checkout methods that Stripe allows you to do seamlessly, which is pretty awesome. So I like the Link option. It definitely allows for some really quick checkout experiences if the user or the website is using Stripe as its payment processor. So now that we have these payment method types, this is really all you need, and it should change that payment element altogether. So if we actually refresh after it is done compiling, and then we just, we're just going to submit again, we can see that we now have these options, and this is the actual tab view here. And you can also see that Stripe included a warning here: the following payment method types are not activated: Link, Cash App, US bank account, right? So it does not obviously like the fact that we're trying to use payment methods that we haven't activated ourselves in Stripe. So make sure that before you go live with this, you definitely activate those, you activate your account, and everything is good. But first thing we notice is that when we actually have our inputs here, the styling is very different than the styling of the inputs in our payment method, right? So these are actually significantly better. They actually have a style of some kind. And so we're going to want to update that. And we can obviously, if we're starting fresh, we could use Stripe styling. We could try and mimic this in our own input boxes. But what happens if you have, a different styling? What happens if you have a dark mode? There's all sorts of different ways that, if you have a branded company that has its own branding, that already has a website and everything, you want a consistent experience across everything, right? Even the payment element. And so we want to make sure that we can modify this at least good enough to where it looks like it is part of your application. So first things first, we can play around with this kind of structure here as well. So this is the tab structure, which personally is my favorite option for Stripe payment element. But some people there's also an accordion option as well. And there might be a third one, but for now, let's go ahead and just check out the accordion option. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. So we're gonna open up our client source and we're gonna go to app.ts here. And we're gonna go down to where we actually call, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it, or at least it's a little bit bigger. But right here, where we actually call elements.create and we create the payment element, we have this layout here that you can change to be accordion. And so if we change this here, and we pop open everything again and we refresh, when we actually create the payment element, it is now different. You can see it's actually an accordion where you can click it and it'll actually expand / retract the options. So you can see that it's slightly different. Again, personal preference in terms of the actual experience, but we do see that everything here is still different, than our own input boxes, right? Or our own experience, let's just say. And so let's go ahead and we'll leave it accordion for now. We're gonna switch it back to tabs, but for right now, I wanna actually go through a little bit of styling. So we're gonna style some of our own elements first. So let's go ahead and pop open our public CSS and our styles.css. So you can see that we have this submit button here. We're gonna delete that. We're gonna do everything just because we only have one button and we have some input boxes. So we're gonna do everything through input and button. So let's go ahead, we're gonna create our input and we're going to create our button as well. So we're gonna style both of these. So we have our input. Let's make it a little bit wider. Let's say min width 20 ems. Border, we're gonna say none. I'm actually gonna kind of style this a little bit off of how Tailwind does its components, which actually has no border on its input. It uses box shadow for basically everything, which is kind of a cool way to do it because it allows you to kind of just modify your box shadow to create some focus effects and things like that. So if you're wondering how Tailwind does its components, this is generally how it likes to do it. If you guys don't know what Tailwind is, it's a CSS framework similar to Bootstrap. If you don't know what that is, check out CSS frameworks and check in tailwindcss.com. This is not a sponsored video. We like Tailwind, and honestly, for Covalence's website for Gravity, our LMS, we use Tailwind. So big fans. Could be better though. Anything could be better. But we'll say padding. Let's do 0.75 ems, and do 1 em of X padding. And for box shadow, this is where we are going to make it an inset. This is kind of how Tailwind likes to do it. Again, 0, 0, 0, 1 px, and then we'll say RGB. And it's going to be this kind of grayish color. So I'm copying this from what they use, 219, right? And then we'll do an outline. We'll remove the outline, which is actually a default Chrome feature, or I guess default Chrome style that it likes to put when you focus within the element. So when you focus within an input, it likes to give you this outline, but let's just tell it no outline. We don't want any outline at all in the input. And we're going to use box shadow for basically highlighting anything that's when it's actually focused. So let's go ahead and do that actually. Let's put our input focus state. And when we focus, what we're basically going to do is we're going to change this box shadow. We really just want to change the color of it. We don't want to make, well, actually, let's make it a little bit more noticeable too. We'll do 2px. So we'll change it by 1 pixel. And we have this kind of cool blue that Covalence likes. It's not the exact blue we're going to use, but we're going to do this 256 3EB. And it's kind of this nice looking blue right here if you guys want to see it on the color spectrum. But that's kind of a cool blue that we like. So let's go ahead and do that. And that'll be kind of like a primary color, more or less. And then for our button, let's change this up because it's pretty ugly as is. Let's add our font weight bold back in since it was already bold from the submit. And then we're going to add some padding. Let's give it the same Y padding as the input boxes, but we'll give it a little bit bigger X padding. Let's do our color. Let's make it white because we're going to make the background color the same as our primary. So we're going to do background color is that primary blue, and we'll say border. We'll remove the border for this as well. That blue is just going to basically cover any kind of border or edge radius. And we're going to make the border radius the same as the input boxes. So we're going to do 6 pixels. And our box shadow, we are going to add a box shadow because I like box shadows on buttons. Some people hate them. But I just think it looks really cool when you have the box shadow on a button and then you click it and you remove the box shadow. It kind of makes it look like the button's actually depressing. So let's go ahead and do RGBA, and it's going to be 0, 0, 0, and we'll do 0.25. So it's going to be extremely light. It's really just for effect. And let's add our cursor pointer in there just so that we can actually make it look like a little pointer. It looks like something clickable. And then when we have our hover effect, we are going to just change the background color slightly. So let's go ahead and we're going to make it a slightly darker blue. So let's do 1948AE. And basically that's just, you could more or less drag it straight down on the color spectrum. And then for active state, we're going to make it even darker. So we're going to say background color, and we can do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7D. I like that number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7D. Or like that hex value. And we'll say box shadow none, like I was saying before. It'll make it kind of look like the button's being depressed. And yeah, so this is going to style those elements. So that should be all we need for right now. Actually, only other thing I would say is that for our inputs, we can actually change the color as well. So let's do color. Let's make it the same as our H1 color too. So we keep all the kind of the colors the same there. And yeah, so everything's still running. It's recompiled the CSS, or I guess it didn't need to. It's just, it is CSS. So when we refresh the page, it should be updated. So let's go ahead and refresh. And you can see now that these already look better, right? We have, our submit button looks way better, has a hover effect. When we push it down, you can see the slight box shadow. You guys might not be able to see this in the video, I'm not sure, but I can see it on my screen. It's just an ever so slight box shadow effect where when you click it, it disappears. So it's pretty cool how that works. And we get the color changes with the button as well. So let's go ahead, and you can see when we focus this, we get this nice blue inset ring. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, already it's starting to look better, right? So let's go ahead and we're gonna submit, but it still isn't perfect because in here we have this kind of light blue outline effect, very different than the actual values than the actual styles that we have in our input boxes, right? So it's probably good enough to where people aren't going to notice too much. But if you want to go ahead and make it one step better and make it exact, I'm going to show you right now how to do that. So I've already kind of showed you how to style the difference between the tabs and the accordion. But this appearance API is what we're going to use, which I have this tab open up here, and they have themes, variables, and rules. So these are kind of the 3 primary things that we're going to be able to use or we're going to be able to change, right? And so the way that we actually do this is we actually create our own appearance. Let's see if they actually have it in here. Yep, so we created just an object that doesn't need to be called appearance. It can be called whatever you want. But it's going to contain our theme, our variables, and our rules all within this object. And then we pass it in as a property to our object argument that we pass in when we call stripe.elements. So it's actually being passed into the elements constructor and not the element constructor, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and we're going to pop open our code blocks again, and we're going to go to app.ts. And so yeah, this is where Elements is creating the payment element, and that's where we pass in accordion versus tabs. But if we want to actually update all the styles for the elements, we have to pass it in to our actual elements constructor here. So we can go ahead, we can create that appearance element. You can call it whatever you want. Again, you can call it A if you want. But in here, we can actually put our theme, and they have three different themes. They have a flat theme, a stripe theme, and a night theme. The night theme is really for kind of like a dark mode appearance, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like real quick, actually. So if we go ahead, we pass in appearance here as well. You can see TypeScript gets all pissed off, but we can change that if we just grab the type appearance. So We're gonna go ahead and grab that type appearance, and we can cast this here to be of type appearance. And now we will actually be okay as far as typings go. So if we go ahead and save that, it should recompile it. And we're gonna be using this night theme at first. So let's go ahead and we're going to refresh, and we're going to just pull that up real quick. And you can see now that the night theme, it's completely dark, right? All these elements are more or less different. You have that green glow, which is pretty cool. If we click save, you have like kind of like a pink error state, which is nice. Also this alert, you can see this kind of looks messed up now. It's because this alert pops up. I don't know why I have this alert in there. That's because you probably do want some sort of alert in here, but again, I'm using actual like the JavaScript native alert, which is terrible. Never use this in your own apps. This is just me being lazy and not wanting to code up an entire alert, you know, for this application, for this demo, I should say. But you can see after I get rid of this, it actually expands it. So the height of this element changes dynamically based off of error states. And so like, for instance, if I remove this, if I remove that whole row, you can see that that actually changed, right? So remove this row, the height of this changed. So they're constantly changing the height of this. So if we put this alert in there, it stops the execution of everything. And so it's going to affect, you know, the visibility of certain elements in this DOM, right? So actually, so what we should do is two things. Let's go ahead. And first, you've actually seen what this night mode looks like. Let's go ahead and see what, from an accordion standpoint, what that looks like. So we're going to switch it back to be, we're going to switch it back to be tabs. And we're going to leave it night real quick just because I want to show you that, but I am going to get rid of that alert. So that's actually down here. It's this not result.error alert. We're going to get rid of that. We're just going to return. We're not going to worry about it too much. Now we should have something to kind of show the error if it isn't, you know, something that's within the actual payment element. And you can actually verify if it is the payment element or not that is the error, or if it's actually something coming from Stripe. So again, that is, you know, an additional thing you can do that I'll let you guys, you know, work on. Or if you guys really want to see it, I'll add it, or I'll put the code in the comments or something like that. But for right now, we are going to worry about, you know, the appearance. And so we've changed it back to be tabs. So when we actually submit this now, you know, you can actually see that it is still dark. It's kind of cool looking actually with the white background. But again, this is really meant more for like if our body had, you know, a background color of like black, let's just say, right? So you can see how like this would be kind of like way more appropriate. And it looks pretty awesome with the black background, right? So definitely built for a dark theme or some sort of darker website. So let's go ahead. We're gonna get rid of this night for now. The default is Stripe, so we'll just kind of keep it with Stripe for now. And what we can do is we can start kind of changing things with variables. So variables, there's only a set number of variables that are active. So something like, I'm gonna show you guys real quick what variables are available. So you can go reference this on stripe.com. It's just on their docs. But these are all of the commonly used variables as well as less commonly used variables. It's funny that they separate it out into commonly and less commonly used. But essentially, these are all of the variables that are allowed or that they allow you to use, right? So there is a limited number, but you know, they've been fairly smart about which, you know, variables you would need to be able to change, and they do get into it pretty specifically. So like, for instance, color danger is more or less that color option. You know, if we click save, you know, the pink is essentially the color danger of this theme. And then you can see that like even the icons here and like the outlines and everything change. So like by just setting color danger, all of that will change, which is super nice. If you just wanted the text to be a different color, you can actually set color danger text, which is a bit more specific. So you can see like color success text, color danger text, color warning text, right? So that is kind of nice. And so basically, yeah, in terms of like actually being able to change certain things, it is nice, right? Now, I don't know exactly when it says the color of text appearing on top of any var danger color background. Okay, so basically if they have a danger color on the background, this might be like white by default if it's a red background, and then this could be the actual text color, changing it in terms of like actually going over that. So I'm not exactly sure if that changes this. It should, but we can actually test it if you want live. But again, that color danger is very nice to be able to kind of update because it'll change everything in here, right, in one go. So let's go ahead and we are going to let's go ahead and change that. Let's just see what it looks like. So let's go ahead, change variables. We're going to do border radius. We're going to change it to be 6 pixels because that's what our application is doing. And we're going to say color danger. Let's just say it's like purple or something like that. It'd be kind of interesting. So let's say border radius 6, color danger purple. And we changed it to be stripe now. And we have our tabs back. So let's go ahead and kind of see what this looks like. So we are going to submit. We now have everything is now 6 pixels in border radius. Obviously, that's going to be something extremely close to what we had before. I think by default Stripe uses 5, so you're not going to be able to see the difference there. But when we save it, now we can actually see it's a purple error state and not a red error state like it typically is, right? So kind of cool, just something that, obviously is easy to change. But we're going ahead and comment that out for now because who wants a purple color, danger or a purple error state, right? So next thing that we want to go into is our rules, because the rules actually allow us to style specific elements. So what we want to do is we actually want to style those input boxes. So what we want to do is we want to do something called input here, and I'll kind of show you real quick what Stripe allows. So after the variables section on this page, we have our rules, and you can see that it's actually putting CSS rules in objects, and they have essentially all of these rules here. You're not allowed to actually do any of the private selectors, unfortunately. It'd be kind of cool if you could. But you can affect all inputs, all labels, all tabs, and then you have separate states for your different like invalid / empty / those kind of states, right? So you can see here, tab icon, tab label. They do a pretty good job of actually describing each of these. And then you have pseudo classes for things like hover, focus, active, and disabled, which is really nice. So that gives you some pretty good flexibility in terms of actually styling these. You have your labels, your input, and your error here. So you can style these separately. And then obviously we have input here. We have our hover, our focus, disabled, and autofill states, which are all really nice. You have empty and invalid, and then you have pseudo classes, which are going to be hover, focus, and then you have pseudo elements like placeholder and selection, which you can all change. So again, super cool that you can actually affect or change all of those things. You have floating versus resting labels. So there are definitely a lot of different states that they go. One thing you can't do, which is kind of irritating, is you can't just change like one input box. And I think, they obviously do that for a really good reason. They probably couldn't think of a reason why you'd ever want to do that. But every once in a while, there does come up something where you actually do need to change something like that. And so it is ironic that they don't let you do that. But I could definitely see, why or how that could get irritating or interesting, right, from a development standpoint. So I don't blame them for it. I think, the options that they give you are pretty awesome. And you have definitely a lot of different elements that you can style here. So again, I'm not going to go through every single option or every single item. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the ones that make sense, which are going to be the input and then the input focus class that we're going to use. We're going to go from there. So let's go ahead and come back to our application, and we're going to first do our box shadow, right? So box shadow, and that's going to be essentially the exact same style that we're doing here. So we can go ahead and we can copy this from our input. And then we're going to have our border none. And we're going to do our outline as none. And our padding is going to be 0.75 ems and 1 em. All right, and so that's basically just being copied directly from here. And then we can do our color as well, actually. So we want to make sure everything's the same. And it's going to be 444. So next we have our input focus. So again, it is going to be input focus, right? And we forgot our colon there. All right, and then for this, we're just going to change our box shadow here. So we can change it to be 2 pixels. Well, let's go ahead and just copy it just so that we don't screw anything up. But yeah, it's going to be this same value. And note that these are all string values, right? So you always pass in a string value for this. If it was pixels, it would still be 6 pixels, kind of like up here. So these would be exactly the same. So we have our input, we have our input focus, and we're passing in our appearance. So now all of these rules should affect, what's currently there, and everything should change to be like that, right? So note that this, when we actually click into this right now, it kind of creates this light blue, shadow around it. But if we go ahead and we reload this real quick, you can see that now when we actually load this, it is the exact same as our elements before, right? So again, everything, even the select boxes here kind of get that nice hover box shadow. So everything looks really cool. We have all of these, even the value in the actual link tab is the exact same. So it really does style everything, which is, obviously nice. And it's quick, right? You don't have to do each individual element. You just basically do it at the high level there. So everything looks pretty good here. And yeah, so I guess the only thing left to do is, well, I guess just submitting it as is kind of dumb. So we can put a little, obviously a check in there to check to see if, any actual email is there. But you can see that throughout all the tabs as well, all of the input boxes have been updated too. So again, super nice. And you can see that it doesn't actually allow you to do all of the classes. So if you come down in here, these are the actual supported CSS properties. So when I say all the classes, I meant all of the CSS properties. So for input, it gives you all of these options, which is fairly significant. But again, it's not everything. So you can't just create your own CSS rules, because all of this is actually done within a iframe, or within an iframe here. So if you come up a certain number of elements here, you come up to the payment element. Let's see, at some point in here, it actually is put in an iframe. So let's see. Oh, this is it. Sorry. No, that was pretty dumb. Well, apologize for the pause. The iframe is here. I just didn't go up high enough. I for some reason thought that this document was, or this HTML was the HTML head of my document, but this is actually just the HTML and head of the iframe, right? So here's the iframe. The entire element's in an iframe. So if we actually put, our CSS properties in to try and style these in particular, we would never actually get to it, because this iframe has its own CSS, right? And so that's kind of why we need this appearance object that we're putting in there. And yeah, so more or less, you can't actually affect these without injecting your own CSS, which is a nightmare in and of itself. So wouldn't even recommend it. That's why Stripe provides you with this capability, and makes it obviously significantly better. So yeah, so I guess last things last, or so we can just go in here and we can actually check, make sure that this submit is going to check and see if the email, so if not email.value, we'll just want to return. We could alert and say, please input an email address. And now that we have this, we won't be able to just automatically submit anymore, which makes it more of a pain for testing, but a better experience overall, because you'd want to at least collect an email address, right? So again, if we try and submit now, please input an email address. We can input, test.com. Now we actually have the email address in there. We have everything looking nice and consistent, right? So we're actually showing our elements and everything exactly the same as when we input the email address. And our button's nice and blue, everything matches, and your application looks incredible. All right, so I hope that was easy enough to understand. It took a little bit longer than I was hoping it would, but I wanted to be thorough in terms of what Stripe actually allows you to do and why it allows you to do the things it does. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe. We're always dropping new content, and we have a lot of cool videos in the queue that are coming up. And if you guys haven't checked out our community membership, make sure you do. It is the basically all-encompassing offer that we have for all of our courses, and definitely a ton of material. And it is a great place to kind of learn how to code and really kind of develop your skills. So again, check it out. Link is in the description below. Check out our merch store, and we'll see you soon. Get out of here.